Good morning, friends. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. Welcome to the 109th episode of this podcast. So glad to have you joining in with us this morning. Today is I believe, the 6th of December 2021. We continue to progress our way towards the end of the year, with each coming day bringing Christmas closer and all of life's sort of evolutions. But I'm glad that you're spending these few moments here with us this morning here on the Checkin In podcast. My name is Biniam. I'm your host. I am thrilled to spend some time with you on this really early morning. I'm doing the recordings far earlier than I usually do because I've got some new commitments work-wise, and so that is beckoning me elsewhere at the usual time that I was uh, recording the podcast. However, I'm glad that we can still keep connection with you through the recordings on Instagram, YouTube, and of course on Spotify as well. This is the podcast where we focus on three key pillars: awareness, kindness, and happiness. Those three things are sort of the things that I guess, processed a lot of my lessons through, is by learning these three key things in so many vantage points in life. And I want to share what that looks like for me as I continue to pursue growth, personal growth. And as I share that process with you, I hope to encourage and inspire you to also see and consider what that looks like in your own context. I happen to think that life is far better enjoyed when we do it in community instead of alone. And so, along those lines, I want to say thanks for hanging out and joining along the way here. So, without further ado, let us go ahead and dive into the three key pillars. Awareness has more to do with getting to know ourselves super well so we can know how we are designed to live life. Kindness is more so in reference to kindness to ourselves, because we don't do that very well. And of course, happiness is amongst many other emotions which are critical and important, but we want to facilitate and say, what does that look like for us? So, welcome to the 109th episode. Today's question is a bit of an interesting one. Today's question is one more along the lines of being aware of where we're at, and also the second component there, the kindness piece. And as we tend to those two, I think the happiness usually falls in place. But here is the way I've worded today's question that we're answering or considering. We're asking, are you appreciating the journey or focusing on your destination? Are you appreciating the journey more, or are you focusing on your destination? Now, for most, they would probably, I think, say, of course, the one is the right answer. We should be appreciating the journey. But even as we can reflect ideologically on some of the right answers that we know, saying, of course, everyone knows this, the real question is, how well are we experiencing said answer? You know what it's like when you know the right answer, but you don't really have experiential knowledge of said answer. So, what does that look like as we consider this question? Are you enjoying your journey, or are you focusing more on your destination? I use those verbs in this question very carefully because I think it almost encapsulates what I see happening in my own experience and also my observation of others who are in the way trying to figure life out as well. Are you appreciating the journey more, or are you focusing on your destination? So, my hope as I answer this question for myself or consider this question is that you also will have a chance to reflect on where you're at in your own context. Are you appreciating the journey more, or are you focusing more on the destination? Let's unpack this just a wee bit. This is a helpful way of thinking about where we're at any given point in our journey. And as we consider our progression forward in life, it's important to be aware. There's a first pillar of our podcast: be aware of how we're navigating. And it's really important to be aware, I believe, because most of us, myself included, don't naturally know ourselves well enough. We don't naturally know ourselves well enough to be able to know how to strategically and carefully choose the right options for ourselves in life. For example, if I were to ask you, when's the last time you attended to ensuring that your heart was beating regularly? For most of us, that's something we don't even know or think about. I mean, we know our heart's beating, but we don't necessarily give thought to making sure that that is being attended to, because our body just does its thing. Our body just functions, and we trust that it's going to do its thing very well. Justin, good morning. I am up early. It is that time of life when I have some obligations work wise, and that calls on me um, to be out there working. So, hence why I'm here. But glad to have you here with me this morning, Justin. So, what does that look like for us to become more aware, not of our physical um, happenings inside of our body, which we don't take note of? That's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm bringing up that point just to give an example of how well we don't know ourselves. There are so many components about us and the way we exist that are beyond our sphere of understanding, perhaps, or our reflection. And so, how can we grow in knowing what makes sense for us? For example, for some people, they might wish they could accomplish a lot more in the midst of their day, but they find that they only have so much energy that doesn't stretch to covering the responsibilities or things that they have on their to-do list as they would like, right? And so, in that kind of a setting, what does that look like? For them to acknowledge and say, okay, I've got limitations time wise, energy wise. I can only accomplish so much. So, how can I reappropriate my expectations for what I accomplish work wise? That's a really helpful thing to know or be aware of. But if you don't actually take time to think in terms of how can I get to know myself and what my abilities are, you may continue biting off more than you can chew. And so that awareness piece is really critical, especially in this question here. Are you enjoying the journey or focusing on the destination? Because when we do the one to the exclusion of the other, when we do the latter to the exclusion of the former, we find that we may miss a lot of fantastic opportunities in life that enable us to be aware of how we're shifting and growing over time. I think most of us struggle, myself included, with focusing on the destination. We want to get to a certain point and say, okay, here's my goal over here. I want to reach this point over here, and I'm going to strive as best as I can to get over there. What does that look like for me to progress towards that point that finally spells in some way completion? We love to see things getting done. For example, I remember when I was young, and me and my siblings were instructed to clean up the house, clean up our rooms, clean up the kitchen, clean up the living room, while mom and dad would go out to the grocery store, and they gave us, about an hour and a half. They said, we'll be back in an hour and a half. We want to see the job done. And of course, we'd procrastinate. We'd procrastinate until like the last, 20 minutes. And all of a sudden we'd be like, we got to get this work done. And what would we do? We would scramble and get as much done as we could. And then as we tried to get all that done, we were focusing more on the destination. But looking back, there was more of a journey to that element than just the destination, right? The destination was we got the job done, but what was involved in it? Procrastination. That's part of the story, the journey at least. And what we did in the midst of that, what did that tell us about ourselves? And then the crunch time when we try to get all the stuff done. I'm getting a question here asking this is from Galtati. What are you most passionate about in life? I am most passionate, Galtati, about growth. I love seeing growth in me. I love seeing growth in others. I love seeing us become more aware and more kind. These are just the pillars of my podcast. I'm really, really passionate about seeing growth in me and growth in seeing growth in others as they also go to a deeper level in experiencing life and processing and thinking through and setting their trajectory in a way that really resonates with them. That gets me going. So that's one of my primary passions in life. Thanks for the question. So along those lines, there was that example I was just giving about the journey that was far more in Thank you, Galtati. Well said, he said. It encourages me when I look back and say there was a lot more to understanding who I am, not when I'm pursuing the destination in life, whatever that is, but when I'm pursuing the goal. Hey, Benny, my aunt's in hospital and encouragement. World of photos. I am so sorry to hear your aunt is in the hospital. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm not sure what the setting is for her being in a hospital, but it is not a fun place to be, especially if you're the one being attended to. World of Photos, let me see if I can encourage you this way. If you haven't had the opportunity to express to your aunt how much she means to you, maybe this is that reminder to you to attend to her. She has COVID and isn't doing that good. I hear you, World of Photos. I would say this is probably a reminder for all of us as we're considering World of Photos sadness that his aunt's in the hospital, to reach out to those that are really meaningful to us in the relationships, those who have invested in us, those who we really care about. Whoever that person is that pops into your mind, and for you, World of Photos, it would probably be your aunt. Reach out to that person and express to them why you appreciate them in your life, why you appreciate the influence that they have, yeah, and why they're important to you. It doesn't have to be anything flowery or like grand. It can be just something as simple, World of Photos, as saying, I want you to know how much I appreciate you and I love you. Something simple like that. If you have some more you want to say, throw that in there saying, here's some favorite memories I have of you and why you are important in my life. Something simple like that would probably be yeah, it would work really well. So that's my encouragement to your, World of Photos. I'm so sorry your aunt's in the hospital. Use this as a reflection point and saying, here, let me write down some things of what I appreciate about your aunt, and I wanted to share those with you. And I think that will help serve you and her. You by way of encouragement, saying, at least I'm able to encourage her in some small way. And her, she'll be tremendously encouraged by this extension, this sacrifice, this love that you're expressing to her. It'll serve her really well while she's there. And I think both of you will be really benefiting from that experience. Try that. And you're so welcome, World Photos. Your voice is relaxing, says like a girl Tati. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I've got a lovely voice, and I'm very thankful I do. I'd rather not have the opposite problem. Back to my point. I was saying something along the lines of we enjoy a lot more while we're in the journey in life than we do if we're just striving for the destination. Let me see if I can give you an example. When I'm on road trips, I'm the kind of guy who wants to get from point A to point B. I want to get to the destination. I want to do it as efficiently as possible. I want to get there and I want to get on with my business. But when I get there, I value and appreciate those who are on a different track, though, and who remind me to consider a different track when they're on road trips. They plan the road trip, but they plan plenty of margins around that road trip. It might be a 4 hour drive, perhaps, that we're considering taking, but they may plan, I don't know, 7 hours. Why? Because they want to make space and time for the unexpected along the way. If all of a sudden they see a beautiful bunch of flowers on the side of the road, they want to maybe pull over and go and enjoy those flowers. Perhaps they want to explore a waterfall that is being featured along the way, that they did not know about, but we come across it. They have now time for that. So these are the individuals who, in our question, are appreciating the journey. They're saying there's so much unexpectedness in life, in the course of life, that we want to be available for those moments as they arise. They want to plan as much space in their schedule to be able to accommodate for other things that they really want to experience and enjoy along the way. Hello, Khaled. Nice to see you, my friend. I can't get any comments for some reason on my Instagram. So if you're saying hello, I see you. Good to have you here. And so I appreciate these individuals because they help remind me to slow down and to enjoy the little moments along the way that are critical in the process of aiming for our destination, in the process of aiming for accomplishing our tasks and responsibilities, which are important. But if we focus solely on those elements, we miss so many other opportunities along the way. So that's why I'm talking about this point here today. The best way to deal with stress, asked Tati. The best way to deal with stress would be awareness. First pillar of our podcast, aware of what you're capable of handling or not handling. Stress is one of those things where you just have so much expectation in a short span of time. That's how I sort of picture stress. There's like, I got to get all this done, but I don't have enough time to do it. And so I feel like constrained. There's tension, there's pressure. That's sort of what I feel. So being aware of what you're able to handle first and foremost. How much can you handle by way of the responsibilities or work that you need to get through? That's a really important place to start. What does that look like for you when you are considering your abilities that way? When you understand what you can handle, saying, okay, I can only handle, say you have like 50 pages to read for a deadline, and you know you can only get through maybe 5 pages before you're just going to zone out or you need sleep or something. Being aware that's really important. Then communicating that with those who you're responsible to get whatever done with, saying, listen, I only have so much bandwidth for this. Can I make a plan to be able to execute what is necessary here over this period of time, knowing how well I know myself? Or even for yourself, appropriating your own expectations and saying, what can I do right now, and how can I systematically work my way through responsibly with what I need to get done? Is that helpful, or is there a better way I can answer that for you that's more specific to your context? I'm just kind of shooting in the dark here. So that's how I would handle stress personally, is knowing what can I handle, how can I plan everything out in such a way where I don't have to carry that stress because I have a plan, right? And so it makes a lot of sense. Good. I'm glad to hear. So, yes, even with your question right there, let me use that as an example. Most of us experience stress of some sort. And stress usually gets us focusing on the destination, right? We need to have this endpoint arrived at, whether it's a bill to be paid, whether it is recognizing what's troubling you. Yeah, that's a really important component too, as well, for sure. Knowing what your abilities are and what's expected of you, and then knowing how you're going to fulfill that. There's a lot more that happens in the process of figuring all that out. Eventually, you'll get to the destination, but that destination is just a point in time, right? And if you're just aiming for that point in time to experience that while ignoring and neglecting all that happens in that process going there, you're missing so many opportunities, your friends, to get aware of, here's how I operate, and here's how I want to grow through this process, and here's what I'm going to learn about myself, and so many other elements that are going to be instructive and helpful for you, not only being aware of who you are, but also growing kind to yourself. Do you know how many times we are awful to ourselves, especially in stressful times? When we're under the crunch, we just kind of go to town on ourselves by doing some awful things in our mind, in our energy space, right? It's just it is really unfortunate. But being aware of what your abilities are in the midst of stress, being aware so that you can also know how to apply kindness to yourself while you're in the midst of growing, critical, so critical, right? And then finally, that makes a lot more space for you to enjoy some happy moments while you are proceeding forward. Happy moments, maybe because you're seeing how you're growing as an individual, how you're able to um, work on some elements of personal development and growth. So you can look back and say, I'm not the same person I was before. And that is one of the things I love the most when I think about myself. When I look back on who I was, I have a story. There's a lot of good parts in my story, but then there's also a lot of struggles. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of other things going on that I'm like, oh, this is not the easiest thing to come to terms with. And yet, knowing that, looking back on my story, I can see the contrast. Here's where I once was in my ignorance. Here's now where I'm at with intuitional awareness. And when I contrast those things, I see the journey that took for me to get from point A to point B. And yes, I arrived at the destination, but guess what happened at the destination? I appreciate the journey a lot more because in the journey, In the process of change over time, slow incremental change, in the patience that it was necessitated, in the time that it took, in the frustrations I had along the way. There it is, my story. I'm being asked here by Archer, how do you become the best person possible? I love that question. Really good question. I would say, Archer, there's a few components. I've encapsulated them in the three pillars of my podcast: the awareness piece, the kindness piece towards yourself, and the happiness in the midst of all other fantastic emotions. But as you're pursuing these things, can I suggest something else? This is a difficult thing to try and become a better person while you're doing it on your own. A critical element for me as I reflect in my life on what my experience has been like, my experience in life has been one where, for the most part, I've tried to become a better person on my own. And when I'm doing it on my own, I found the futility there because I can't do it on my own. Personally, I'm aware that growth for me happens in community. It happens in community, especially because the better others know the true me, not the me that I'm trying to present that I want everyone to see, but the true struggling Binyam. When I'm able to share that with safe people, safe friends, my people in my life, then they're able to see that process. I was just touching base with one of my close friends here recently. We haven't been able to talk for a couple of weeks, but we're able to reconnect. And as we're talking, and he was asking me some very pointed questions about my health, my mental state of being, my progress in life, just some of the struggles and things that we've gone through since we last talked. And I was able to share with him, and he was like, I'm so glad to connect with you and care for you this way. And I said, I'm so glad that you know me while I'm of no significance. Um, and I say that no significance by way of I'm not well known. I'm not like I may have a small following, but all that's to say, I don't. Uh, I don't have any measure of success. A success is put, with thousands and millions of people knowing you. Joseph Dean, good morning. How are you? Nice to have you here. And so, along those lines, I would say it's critical to have your community around you to help facilitate that growth. They can see the blind spots that you're not aware of. To become the best person possible, see where you're at in community and how you're a part of community, how you're sharing yourself with those that you are growing to trust, how you're able to share with them saying, hey, here's the areas where I'm struggling right now. Here's the areas where I'm trying to process through. Can I have some insight? Can I have some help? Can I have some accountability? All those things are really important. So to become the best person possible, for sure, be aware of yourself. Continue to grow in being aware of yourself and showing yourself kindness. That's a really important component in making space for your happiness as well. Experiencing what that looks like by processing all the other things that are going on under the hood of your engine, and find yourself in community. Find yourself amongst people who you are growing to trust that way, and that continues to help raise your worth as a person. Um, and when I say create your worth as a person, it means you are seeing growth. You're seeing more and more upward trajectory in your experience because you're learning along the right way. That's what I would encourage, Archer. Great question. What sort of people do you get along best with? I get along best with people who are self aware, people who are committed to, like Archer, saying, what does it look like for me to become the best person possible? Joseph Dean says, you should come to Tennessee sometime, man. Everybody needs outdoors for a nice mental reset for real. Washington State is real nice as well. I would love the opportunity, Joseph Dean. It would be magnificent. I would be a hell yes to coming and visiting all these places around your country down south. I would be a hell yes. I just know that my limitations right now keep me here, and so I just got to be responsible with what's in front of me, and continue to be consistent in plotting towards where I want to go. There again is another expression. I'm in the journey right now. I'm in a tough season of my journey where I'm having to deal with some limitations, but in the midst of that, I am gonna still enjoy the moments right now. So I was telling my younger sister, right now these moments are really critical for me. Critical in that I'm able to While I struggle right now, to make it through economically and goal wise, business wise, I'm struggling. But as I'm struggling my way forward, I'm also able to appreciate a lot of what's happening in the moment. There's some things I have access to right now by way of growth. I'm able to see myself and say, hey, there's some good things that are going on here. And I super appreciate that. My goal is still in front of me, but my goal is not the be all and end all. It's not just that I would experience success and period, I'm done. No, I'm seeing myself continually in motion. I'm seeing myself continually in a season of shifts and change, and that's really important for me. Dope Headphones says, Mickey, hello, Mickey, how are you? Nice to have you here. Joseph says, for real, man, right now I'm just booting down and grinding, trying to find my personal definition of success. Joseph, that's a great thing to discover more about yourself and who you are and what you're made to accomplish in life. I love that. As you do that, I would continue to encourage you to reflect on the in between moments. In between moments, I think, are really what are going to sustain you instead of pushing for the destination. In the in between moments is where I see the most growth in others and in myself. Khalil says, did you always act this way or just because you cheated on your wife? So you're trying to seem innocent? That's a great question. I appreciate that. Khalil, I find most of us have an agenda in life. Well, what are we trying to accomplish and how are we trying to get there? And a really critical component is when you're getting to know people along the way, when you're meeting people, even like myself, it's important to ask that question. Can I trust your intentions in this, or is there an ulterior motive? I think that's what I'm hearing behind your question, and I don't begrudge the question at all. Sometimes when you've burned trust, it takes some time to earn it back. And I know what that's like when I was unfaithful once upon a time. So, yes, I think that's a really important question. I can't answer that for you. I'm going to have to leave that to you to make your own call on that. But I would say some things that might be helpful is to see the consistency in a person's behavior and what they're saying and what they're doing over time. I personally believe that it is part of the journey in life that all of us are committed to, that we're going to make mistakes along the way. Every single one of us. It just so happens in life, however, that some of us make some more significant mistakes than others, and we put them in a hierarchy saying this is the kind of mistake here that there's no redemption from. I don't agree with that. There are some awful things that happen in life and decisions that people make, but I happen to be one of those that believes that every single one of us, we have something to learn along the way. We have something to grow from in the process. And I love that feeling of extending hope to those who are like me, who may feel like I once felt, saying, I've just messed up so badly. I've really made a mess that they don't see that there's any way of growing to be something more. So they kind of feel like they're stuck in this zone. And I want to say, I disagree with that. I'm all for saying it's never too late to become a better person. And so, along those lines, what does that look like for me and for you? And how can we extend more patience to those in our lives to say, hey, you're not a write off. You're just like me trying to figure life out. And we do that by making mistakes along the way and then learning from them and becoming better. That's my commitment. Hope that answers your question. Sorry I haven't been here for a while. GTA Meme God, it's so good to have you back. I'm so sure that we're still connected. Josephine says, to answer your question, I'm not sure if I'm appreciating my journey. I feel like my destiny is something very significant and large. I feel lost currently and not like I'm running out of time. I would say, my friend, that's the temptation of those of us who are struggling to see the distinction. But don't forget, the most important part of your story later when you're reflecting back is not that you arrived, but the journey of you finding it. So right now, the fact that you're like searching, beautiful place to be. Continue to grow in awareness of who you are, what makes sense to you, what brings you joy and happiness in life. In that zone, sometimes there are challenging moments, discouraging seasons, uncomfortable experiences, but through all those good and challenging, together they amalgamate to something really powerful where it makes you more of who you were meant to be. And that is beyond your control, but it is your part to reflect on it and say, okay, I'm not going to squander this opportunity. Friends, so glad to have had you here with me. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great Monday. Bye for now.